Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today I'm going to be going over the top 10 fastest muscle cars in Grand Theft Auto Online around circuits in 2023. Things have changed since the last time I made one of these videos. We have quite a few new cars on this list. We also have some rearrangements, some different cars in different places. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and start off with number 10. Starting off with number 10, we of course have the Vapid Dominator GTX coming in at about $700,000. The Dominator GTX is one of those cars that has engine resistance. However, despite it having engine resistance on a twisty circuit, the Dominator GTX can seriously put up a fight and even beat some of the cars that are just a little bit ahead of it on this list. The GTX's acceleration is supremely nerfed because of the engine resistance. However, that's not the reason that this thing is even on this list. Pretty much the only reason that the Dominator GTX is even on this list is all to do with the handling. The top speed is pretty pathetic, the acceleration is not very good. However, the handling is quite good. I will say it's not the best out of the cars on this list. There are definitely some cars that have better handling as well as better acceleration and top speed on this list, which is why obviously this thing is lower down. So basically, if you guys are going to be doing muscle car races, you're only going to want to use the Dominator GTX on very twisty circuits. If it has long straightaways, do not use this car. Anyways, that's it for number 10. On to number 9. Next up, we have the Bravado Gauntlet Hellfire coming in at about $750,000. This thing is pretty much the polar opposite of the Dominator GTX. This thing has really good acceleration and a pretty high top speed and absolutely horrible handling. Now, that's not to say that I don't love the Gauntlet Hellfire. It's just not really a car that's designed for circuit racing, especially on twistier circuits. However, on long straightaway circuits, this thing is actually pretty good. The acceleration of this vehicle is decent and the top speed is also quite nice. The handling isn't as bad as I'm really saying it is. It's not good, but it's definitely not as bad as it could be. There's definitely some worse handling muscle cars out there. This thing just tends to slide around every single corner, which loses you a little bit of time, and if there's enough corners in a race, you will lose enough time to, well, obviously lose you the race. Something that the acceleration and the top speed just can't make up for. Great car, just not that great for racing, unfortunately. Unless it's drag racing, of course, because then this thing is fantastic. Anyway, guys, that's it for number 9. Let's move on to number 8. Next up at number 8, we have the Imponte Ruiner ZZ8 coming in at about $1.3 million. Now, this is another car similar to the Vapid Dominator GTX that we showed off just a few cars ago. The handling of the Imponte Ruiner is absolutely fantastic. This thing handles super well. Albeit it does slide a tiny bit more than the GTX, however its acceleration and top speed are both higher than the GTX, making it just a little bit more of a competitive vehicle than the Dominator GTX on those twisty circuits. Now again, on a long straightaway circuit, the Imponte Ruiner ZZ8 is not going to really do you any favors. While the acceleration and top speed are higher than the GTX and the handling is honestly about the same, it's just not fast enough to keep up with things like the Gauntlet Hellfire on a circuit with a lot of straightaways and very little corners. Still a fantastic car, definitely has some good upgrades, makes a really good engine sound, and I think that it looks fantastic generally. Anyway, guys, that's it for number 8. Let's move on to number 7. Next up at number 7, we have the Vapid Pisswasser Dominator coming in at a cost of $0 if you are a returning player. I believe it is. If you're not a returning player, I think that it's somewhere in the neighborhood of about $200,000 to $300,000. And this thing is a very, well, OG muscle car. Obviously, everybody remembers the OG Dominator that you can steal off of the street. I'm sure for many of you, it was your first car in GTA, like it was for me. The Pisswasser Dominator is just a much more performance-oriented version of the Dominator. And I say much more, but what I really mean is it's slightly better than the regular Dominator. It has a mildly higher top speed, slightly better handling, and very extremely minorly better acceleration. However, it does have a racing livery, which will make you feel like you're driving a little bit more of a race car, so, you know, that's really what matters. It's also got some good customization. But the reason that it's on this list, of course, is because of its great acceleration and its very high top speed of 126 miles per hour, which is quite quick for the muscle category. The handling of this vehicle is somewhere in between the Gauntlet Hellfires and the Imponte Ruiner ZZ8s. It's not quite as bad as the Hellfires, I would say. However, it's not nearly as good as the ZZ8 or the Dominator GTX. So it's kind of an in-between of both. It's kind of almost the best of both worlds, but just without being the best of either world. You know what I'm saying? Like, the acceleration's good, the top speed's good, the handling is okay, but it's nothing special. Overall, this car is a very middle tier muscle car for racing in Grand Theft Auto Online. It is still mildly competitive, I would say. However, you're going to get destroyed by anything ahead of it on this list still. Same with the other cars on this list, unfortunately. On acceleration and top speed oriented fast circuits, this thing will certainly do better than some of the other cars we've gone over so far. However, not much better, I would say. Anyways, that's it for the Pisswasser Dominator at number 7. Let's move on to number 6. And of course, next up at number 6, we have the Declasse Yosemite coming in at just under $500,000. This is a really interesting car. When you get out of it, the suspension actually lowers, same with when you just come to a complete stop. However, once you start moving, the suspension will actually raise, which is really cool. The Yosemite is kind of an underrated muscle car in Grand Theft Auto Online. Well, mostly because it's a truck. That is something to do with it being an underrated muscle car, I suppose. It has somewhat decent handling. It just seems to slide a little bit when you're going around corners very, very quickly. However, the acceleration and the top speed are absolutely fantastic. So this is definitely going to be another car that is more so suited to the fast muscle car circuits. However, that's not to say that the handling is horrible. It is pretty good. This thing does have a tendency to kind of understeer, and then the back wheels sort of like to slide out as well. However, it's not to say it is a bad vehicle at all. It is very good for racing. Still not quite competitive with the top muscle cars, but it is a decent middle sort of ground muscle car, especially for its price point, which is under $500,000. This thing is very, very good. Lots of customization. Overall, a very good muscle car, I would say. Definitely one that you could potentially win some races with, as long as the people ahead of you who are in faster cars kind of mess up. Still, very good vehicle. Definitely pick this thing up if you guys are interested. With that being said, let's move on to the 5th fastest muscle car in Grand Theft Auto Online in 2023. Next up at number 5, we have the Vapid Dominator GTT. Now, this thing has moved down a little bit since the last time I made one of these videos. This is a very good all-round muscle car in Grand Theft Auto Online. This is where this list is going to sort of get a little bit better. The Dominator GTT is a fantastic muscle car. This thing has very good handling, very good acceleration, and a pretty high top speed. Now, the last time that I made a video talking about the Dominator GTT, it had just been nerfed from the Contract DLC. However, with the release of the Criminal Enterprises DLC, it actually got slightly buffed, so it's back near where it used to be when the Los Santos Tuners DLC released. So that is very good. Definitely one of the better cars for racing in Grand Theft Auto Online. Like I said, obviously this is placed at number 5. This is the 5th fastest muscle car in the entire game, and it also doubles as one of the faster Tuners DLC vehicles for the Tuners races as well, from the Los Santos Tuners DLC, of course. It has a pretty high top speed, somewhere in the neighborhood of 124 miles per hour. The acceleration is very good, and the handling, I would say, is this thing's best feature. This will give any of the other cars that I've talked about, it'll give any of those cars a run for their money for sure. Absolutely handles better than any of them. Even the GTX, it handles better than, I would say. And of course, without the engine resistance, it accelerates way harder, and the top speed is significantly higher. This is a great car for twistier racing circuits in the muscle car category. Anyway, guys, that's it for the Dominator GTT at number 5. Let's move on to number 4. Next up, we have the Vapid Click coming in at number 4 for about $900,000. Now, the Vapid Click is formerly the fastest muscle car in Grand Theft Auto Online. This thing actually had a bit of a reign of terror in GTA for a number of years. This was the fastest muscle car in the entire game because it has something that a lot of the other muscle cars don't have, and that is extremely good handling. The Vapid Click on a twistier muscle car circuit absolutely destroyed the muscle category for quite some time, and even still, it is a very competitive car in GTA Online. The Click has as good acceleration as the Vapid Dominator GTT. It has about the same top speed. However, the handling of this vehicle is slightly better for a number of reasons. Now, on flat ground, the GTT probably handles just as good as this thing, if not maybe even a little bit better. However, over the bumps, the Vapid Click with the suspension slammed all the way down soaks up bumps like you wouldn't believe, making this thing very good for races that are not stunt races. In other words, races that have actual bumps in the road and things like that. This thing really does not get affected by the bumps, and in fact, I believe that the bumps actually make this car faster due to advanced handling flags, which is very interesting. The Vapid Click on a regular muscle car race in GTA will absolutely take off on most other vehicles. Even in stunt races, this thing is fantastic. If you can manage to curb boost with this thing, which basically just means you go up and off of the curb over and over again as you're racing, you will pick up speed unbelievably fast. Overall, the Vapid Click, definitely one of the best muscle cars in the entire game, and for 900k, this thing is a bargain to get you into the top 4, because the next 3 muscle cars that we're going over are very expensive. So with that being said, let's move on to number 3. At number 3, we have the Vapid Dominator ASP from the Tuners DLC, coming in at between $1.3 million if you have the trade price unlocked, and $1.8 million if you do not have the trade price unlocked. Now, the last time that I made a video on this thing, it had just been nerfed with the release of the Contract DLC, similar to the Vapid Dominator GTT that we just went over a few minutes ago. The ASP was always faster than the GTT, and now that it's been kind of reinstated with the release of the Criminal Enterprises DLC, they kind of unpatched it, if you will. This thing is still the 3rd fastest muscle car in the entire game. For a while, it may have dropped down, however, it is still just a very good car. But they have released a couple of new vehicles since this thing was the fastest muscle car in the game, so it's now in 3rd place, and it is still a very competitive muscle car for racing, especially around twisty circuits. But even on circuits with longer straightaways, the ASP does have a pretty decent top speed still, around 125 miles per hour, so it can actually keep up. The acceleration is very, very good on this vehicle, and off the line, it's also very fantastic. It's got a lot of racing mods that you can do to it as well to enhance its kind of handling capabilities. Overall, I do think that this is one of the best muscle cars to race with in the entire game, hence it being in 3rd place. Anyway guys, that's it for the ASP. It's time to move on to the 2nd fastest muscle car in Grand Theft Auto Online in 2023. And the 2nd fastest muscle car in Grand Theft Auto Online is the declassy Vigoro ZX, coming in at just under $2 million. Now, there are a couple things that you should know about the Vigoro ZX. I am on the PC version, which means we do not have the HSW upgrade on the PC, which means that this thing is the 2nd fastest muscle car. However, there's a lot of weird sort of technicalities that we're going to go over with this thing and the car at number 1, and I will explain it all, and hopefully it will make sense to you guys. The Vigoro ZX on PC, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4 is the 2nd fastest muscle car in the entire game. However, if you're on the Xbox Series S or X or the PS5 and you have the HSW upgrade on this thing, it is a lot closer to the number 1 spot than it is on PC, Xbox One, and PS4 because of that HSW upgrade. Now, the reason that it's a lot closer with the HSW upgrade is because the top speed gets increased to 157 miles per hour when you put the HSW upgrade on and fully upgrade the car. The acceleration also becomes much better, and the handling even improves ever so slightly because of HSW suspension, which means that this thing could technically on some circuits be the fastest muscle car in the game because of its extremely high top speed and its crazy acceleration. Overall, I would say that if you are playing on the new Xbox Series S or X or the PlayStation 5 and you have the HSW upgrade on the Vigoro ZX, you will find that this thing is more than likely the fastest muscle car in the entire game to use on your platform. However, on PC, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4, this thing is certainly the 2nd fastest muscle car to use, despite it having a higher top speed than the number 1 car on this list. Anyway guys, we're done talking about the number 2 vehicle. The number 1 vehicle is the same as last year. Let's move on and talk about it quickly. The fastest muscle car in Grand Theft Auto Online still to this day is the Bravado Buffalo STX, coming in at $1.6 million if you have the trade price, or $2.1 million if you do not have the trade price. The STX is simply superior than the Vigoro ZX in a lot of ways, mostly regarding the handling. The Vigoro definitely has pretty good handling, but nothing compared to the Bravado Buffalo STX. This thing's handling is absolutely unrivaled in the muscle car category. It pretty much dominates in terms of handling, and on twisty circuits, this thing will beat a Vigoro ZX even with the HSW upgrade, just because of how competitive it is due to its handling. A fun fact about the Bravado Buffalo STX is that with the Contract DLC, this is actually the 2nd fastest vehicle from the whole DLC, behind the Pegassi Ignis. The Dubocci Champion, which is a supercar, is actually slower around a track than the Bravado Buffalo STX, which is pretty crazy. So in terms of the fastest muscle cars in Grand Theft Auto Online, the Bravado Buffalo STX is pretty much untouchable unless it is on a circuit with very, very long straightaways, where the Vigoro ZX HSW or non-HSW can really stretch its legs. Like I said, the regular Vigoro, even without the HSW upgrade, does have a slightly better top speed than the Buffalo STX. However, I think due to the handling, this thing is still going to beat the Vigoro ZX more often than not. On top of that, I probably should also mention that this thing does have Imani tech in free mode, so you can put a missile lock-on jammer on it. It also has front-mounted machine guns and bullet-resistant windows and an armor upgrade as well. So overall, I would say that the Buffalo STX, if you're looking for generally the best muscle car in the game, I would say you are looking at it with the STX. This thing is absolutely fantastic in pretty much every single way. That has been it for the top 10 fastest muscle cars in Grand Theft Auto Online in 2023. I will be covering every single category in all of GTA as far as the fastest cars go, so stay tuned for that. Leave a like if you enjoyed, dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.